You already know what today was supposed to be. You had a plan. A real one. You wrote it down, maybe. Or at least you thought it through clearly in your head. You were going to start. Finally. This time was different. This time you meant it. And then the day happened. And somewhere between the morning and the night, the plan stayed a plan. And you stayed exactly where you were. This is not a story about laziness. This is not about willpower or talent or how badly you want it. This is about something much deeper. Something most people never stop long enough to understand about themselves. And if you watch until the end, you will see yourself in a way that changes how you move through every single day after this. Stay with me. There is a type of person who is always preparing, always getting ready to start, always one more video, one more plan, one more notebook away from beginning. And from the outside, they look busy. They look focused. They talk about their goals with real fire. They know exactly what they want to do with their life. And the people around them believe in them, because why would not they? This person sounds serious. This person sounds driven. But here's what nobody sees. At night, when the room is quiet and the phone is finally down, this person lies there with a weight on their chest. Not exhaustion. Something heavier. The quiet, pressing knowledge that another day passed. Another day full of thinking and planning and intending, and nothing moved. You know this feeling. You have felt it more times than you want to count. Here is what is actually happening in your mind. Planning feels like progress, and your brain cannot always tell the difference between the two. When you write out a detailed schedule, when you organize your goals into categories, when you research the perfect method, your brain gives you a small reward, a little release, a feeling of accomplishment, and you did not have to do anything hard to earn it. You just thought about doing something hard. That is the trap. The plan becomes the substitute for the action. And the more detailed the plan, the more real it feels. The more it feels like you are already moving, but you are not moving. You are sitting still inside a very convincing illusion. This is called preparatory behavior. And in moderate amounts, it is healthy. But for people like you, it becomes a full-time occupation. You are always in the preparation phase, always one step before the starting line. And the starting line never gets any closer, because every time you approach it, you find one more thing to prepare for first. Let me show you what this actually looks like in a day. You wake up and the first thought is a good one. You feel that familiar surge of intention. Today is real. Today you begin. And that feeling is genuine. That ambition inside you is real. Nobody doubts that. But then the phone screen lights up. Just a quick check. You are not even scrolling. You tell yourself. You are just catching up. But catching up turns into sinking in. 30 minutes disappear. Then an hour. And somewhere in that hour, the intention starts to fade. Not all at once. Slowly. Like a light being dimmed from somewhere you cannot reach. By mid-morning, the motivation that felt so strong when you woke up has become something quieter. A background hum. Still there, but no longer urgent. And your brain, being the efficient machine it is, starts looking for alternatives. Maybe you watch a video about the very goal you are avoiding. Maybe you read an article about productivity. Maybe you open a new note and start building a better plan than the one you already have. And all of this feels productive. None of it is. The afternoon comes. You are tired now, not from effort, but from the low-grade mental friction of managing guilt while doing nothing about it. And tired people do not start hard things. Tired people scroll. Tired people watch. Tired people tell themselves that tomorrow, when they are fresh, they will finally begin. And tomorrow, the cycle starts again. You need to understand something about that cycle. It is not random. It is not weakness. It is a deeply learned pattern that your brain has reinforced thousands of times. Every time you chose planning over doing, your brain learned that planning is safe. Every time you opened your phone instead of your work, your brain learned that distraction is comfortable. Every time you told yourself tomorrow, your brain filed that away as a working strategy. And now that strategy runs automatically. Before you have even made a conscious choice, the pattern is already in motion. This is not a character flaw. This is conditioning. But here's the brutal reality. Conditioning that was built can be dismantled. Pattern that was learned can be unlearned, but not by understanding it alone. Not by watching another video about it. Not by reading one more article. Not by building a better system in a new notebook. Only by doing. Only by moving directly into the discomfort that your brain has been steering you away from. That is the only door out. And that brings us to something most people in your position never want to face directly. You are not afraid of failure. Not really. You are afraid of trying and finding out what that reveals about you. Think about it honestly. As long as you have not tried, the potential is still perfect. The dream version of you still exists, untested, and therefore undefeated. You are still the person who could do something extraordinary, who just has not gotten around to it yet. And that version of you is safe. Nobody can take it away from you as long as you never put it to the test. But the moment you actually start, the moment you produce something real and put it into the world, you have to reckon with who you actually are right now, not who you imagine yourself to be. And that is terrifying. Not because you are not capable, but because you have been using the dream as a shield, and you are not quite ready to lower it yet. Here is what that fear costs you. Every day you stay inside the plan, you are paying a price you cannot see. You are paying it in the slow erosion of belief in yourself, in the growing distance between who you are and who you know you could be, in the quiet accumulation of regret that has not fully arrived yet, but is building, steadily, underneath everything you do. You do not feel it acutely today, but you feel it in the way you scroll past someone else's progress and something tightens in your chest. You feel it in the way you avoid certain conversations because people might ask what you have been working on. You feel it in the way you sometimes go quiet in the middle of a good day because you remember that you are behind, not behind someone else, behind yourself. And that is a particular kind of pain that no amount of planning makes better. Let me talk about comparison for a moment, because it is doing something to you that you have not fully acknowledged. You see someone your age building something real, shipping something, creating something, showing up consistently in a way you have not been able to. And instead of feeling motivated, you feel heavier. You tell yourself they had advantages you did not have. You tell yourself the timing was different for them. And maybe some of that is true, but deep down, underneath the justifications, there is a voice that says something much simpler. They started. You did not. That gap is not talent. It is not luck. It is action repeated over time. It is the willingness to produce something imperfect and put it forward anyway. It is the ability to tolerate discomfort long enough for momentum to build. That is what separates the people you admire from the version of yourself you have been living with. Not intelligence, not opportunity, the decision to act in the presence of uncertainty and move anyway. And you are capable of making that decision. You just have not made it yet. Not really. Here is something you need to sit with. The version of you that plans constantly and acts rarely is not protecting you. It feels like protection. It feels like preparation. It feels like being responsible and thorough. But it is not. It is avoidance that learned to dress well. It is fear that learned to speak in the language of strategy. And it has been running your life for long enough. Think about how much mental energy you have spent planning the thing you have not done. Think about the hours you have put into visualizing a future you are not building. Think about the notes you have written, the systems you have designed, the timelines you have mapped out for goals that are still waiting for you to begin. All of that energy, all of that time, all of that creative capacity, spent in rehearsal for a performance that never starts. What if even half of that energy had gone into actual work? Even messy, imperfect, uncertain work. Where would you be right now? Not at the end, not where you want to be, but somewhere. Somewhere real, somewhere you could build from, instead of exactly where you started, with a longer list of things you still have not done. That thought should sit uncomfortably. Let it. Now here is the shift. Here is where this stops being about understanding and starts being about deciding. You do not need a better plan. You need to start the one you have. You do not need more information. You already have more information than you have ever acted on. You do not need to feel ready, because the feeling of readiness is not something that arrives before you begin. It is something that develops inside the act of beginning. You will not feel ready until you start, and you will not start until you stop waiting to feel ready. That loop ends only one way, with a decision that does not wait for permission. This is where most people lose the thread. They understand everything I've said. They agree with all of it. They even feel genuinely moved by it in this moment. And then they go back to their lives and do the same thing again. Because understanding is comfortable and change is not. Understanding lets you feel like you are engaging with the problem without actually having to solve it. You can understand your procrastination deeply and still procrastinate. You can know exactly why you avoid and still avoid. Knowledge alone does not break the pattern. Action breaks the pattern. Not grand, sweeping, life-altering action. Not the perfect first step done in the perfect way at the perfect time. Small action. Uncomfortable action. Action taken before you feel ready. Action that starts before the motivation shows up, because motivation is not the cause of movement. Motivation is the result of it. You have been waiting for the feeling to arrive before you begin. But the feeling comes after you begin. That is the order. That is the sequence your brain has had backwards this entire time. Do something small today. Not after this video. Not after you have thought about it more. After. And by after, I mean the moment this is over, you take one real step toward one real thing. Not a planning step. Not a research step. A doing step. Something that exists in the real world when you are done, not just in your head. Write the first 3 sentences, not the outline. Make the first call, not the list of calls to make. Record the first 60 seconds, not the script for the whole video. Begin something in its ugliest, most incomplete form. Because ugly and incomplete and real is infinitely more powerful than perfect and finished and imaginary. And when your brain resists, because it will resist, do not negotiate with it. You do not have a conversation with the resistance. You do not reason with it or wait for it to agree. You act in spite of it. You sit down, you open the thing, you start. And for the first few minutes, it will feel terrible, uncomfortable, and awkward and wrong. And then something shifts. Not always, but often enough. The resistance quiets slightly. The work begins to pull you forward instead of pushing you back. And you start to remember that you are actually capable of this. That is the experience you have been avoiding by staying in the plan. That quiet discovery of your own ability. That moment when the doing becomes evidence of something real inside you. You cannot find that in a plan. You cannot feel it in a vision board. You can only find it in the work itself, in the middle of the thing you were afraid to start. Here is what happens when you build this into your days. When you stop asking how you feel before you begin, and simply begin. You start to accumulate something. Not overnight. Not dramatically, but steadily, quietly, in a way that compounds over weeks and months. You accumulate evidence. Evidence that you can do hard things. Evidence that discomfort does not stop you. Evidence that you are not the person who only plans, but the person who also does. And that evidence changes something in you that no amount of motivation ever could. It changes your identity. Slowly, the story you tell about yourself shifts, not because you achieved something massive, but because you showed up again and again in the small, ordinary moments where it would have been easier not to. And your brain, that same brain that built the pattern of avoidance, begins to build a new pattern. A pattern of showing up. A pattern of starting. A pattern of following through. This is how lives actually change. Not through sudden inspiration. Not through a perfect plan finally executed flawlessly. Through the slow, unglamorous accumulation of days where you chose to move despite the resistance. Through the boring repetition of showing up when you did not feel like it. Through the quiet dignity of being someone who does what they said they were going to do, even when nobody is watching, even when it is hard, even when the result is not what you hoped. That person is available to you right now, not after some transformation. Not once you fix yourself or figure yourself out or finally get organized enough. Right now, you just have to choose it and keep choosing it. Not perfectly. Not without falling back into old patterns sometimes, but persistently, with the kind of patience that knows a single bad day does not erase the work of the days before it, with the kind of honesty that stops making excuses and starts making progress instead. Stop planning the life you want. Start building it. One real action, one real hour, one real decision at a time. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is not filled with better ideas. It is filled with work. Ordinary, consistent, imperfect work done by someone who decided to stop waiting. That someone is you, starting now.